The night shift at St. Ridge Memorial smelled of disinfectant, rain-soaked coats, and burnt coffee. Ethan Cole stood at the sink in the emergency break room, scrubbing dried blood from his hands. It wasn't his patient's blood. He wasn't a doctor, not anymore. He was the night janitor, mopping floors, disposing of biohazard bags, fixing leaky carts. But he still moved like the medic he had once been, still assessed people with a glance, still anticipated danger before others even sensed it. He glanced at the time. 4:58 a.m., 2 minutes before his daughter woke up for school. 2 minutes before she would call him with her sleepy voice, asking if he remembered to pack her lunch, even though she was staying with a neighbor tonight. 2 minutes before he would lie gently and tell her everything was okay, even though he was living paycheck to paycheck, even though his uniform shoes had holes, even though he had skipped dinner again. He wiped the sink, exhaled, and pulled out his phone. But before he could dial, the intercom crackled. Code red incoming. Trauma bay. All staff available immediately. Ethan froze. Code reds were never small, never quiet, never clean. He dropped the rag and rushed out the door. The hallways echoed with hurried footsteps as nurses and doctors sprinted toward the trauma wing. Ethan wasn't supposed to run. He wasn't supposed to interfere. His job was to clean, not to save. But instincts built from years as a Navy combat medic did not listen to rules. The automatic doors of Trauma Room 2 burst open. A stretcher crashed inside, wheels screeching. A teenage boy lay on it, pale, barely breathing, his chest rising in shallow jerks. "GSW to the thorax," a paramedic barked. Pressure dropping fast, he coded twice in the ambulance. Ethan's pulse pounded. The boy couldn't be older than 14. Dr. Avery, the attending surgeon, snapped orders with steady precision. "Get me a central line. Prep for open thoracotomy if he collapses again. Move." A nurse reached for an instrument tray and knocked it over. Surgical tools clattered across the floor, spinning away like silver insects. Ethan lunged before they hit the ground, catching the tray on his knee and stabilizing it. The nurse gasped in relief. But Dr. Avery saw something different. Her eyes flicked to Ethan with recognition. Too much recognition. "You," she said. "Get out of the trauma bay. You're not medical staff." Her voice wasn't cruel. Just protocol, just law. But Ethan's eyes stayed fixed on the boy whose breaths were slowing. "He's obstructing," Ethan said before he could stop himself. "You need to reposition him, his airway." I set out. 2 security guards approached. Ethan backed away, hands raised, heart burning with helplessness. He retreated to the hallway, but he couldn't leave. He couldn't walk away from a dying kid. Through the glass, he saw the boy's chest stop rising. "Flatline." Dr. Avery shouted for paddles. A nurse slipped in, the blood pooling on the floor. The cart slammed into the wall. Everything was becoming chaos, and Ethan's instincts snapped. He pushed the door open, sliding past the guards who yelled after him. He grabbed the dropped suction line, cleared the blood clogging the boy's airway, stabilized his head position, and barked, "Charge to 200. Dr. Avery hesitated for a second too long, then followed. "Clear!" The jolt surged through the boy's body. A second of silence. Then beep. A rhythm, weak, but there. The room snapped into order again. Nurses moved efficiently. Dr. Avery guided the procedure with calm confidence. The boy stabilized. For a moment, Ethan felt the oxygen rush back into his own lungs. He stepped away, letting the professionals continue, knowing he had pushed his limits but unable to regret it. Then the door flew open. Rebecca Stanton, the hospital director, marched in with fury radiating from every step. Her gray suit was crisp, her expression sharp enough to cut glass. "Ethan Cole," she said. "My office now." His stomach dropped. She didn't wait for him to follow. She simply turned and walked away, heels striking the floor like gunshots. He glanced once more at the boy, alive, breathing, saved. Then he followed her. The director's office overlooked the city skyline, drenched in early morning fog. Ethan stood before her desk, fingers clenched at his sides. She didn't sit. "Do you understand what you've done?" she said, voice low and deadly calm. "You entered a restricted medical zone. You acted outside your certification. You put this hospital at risk." "I saved a life," Ethan replied quietly. "You endangered our license." He looked at her, and she saw it, the exhaustion, the hunger, the desperation hiding behind calm eyes. But she didn't soften. "You're fired," she said. "Effective immediately. Security will escort you to retrieve your belongings." He felt the words like a physical blow. "Ma'am," he said, voice raw, "I have a daughter, This is not negotiable." His jaw tightened, but he nodded. No point fighting. Not against someone who had already decided he was disposable. Security walked him to the basement janitor room he used as a locker. He packed his few belongings, a worn lunchbox, a folded photo of his daughter, the only pair of gloves without holes. The guards didn't speak. They weren't unkind. Just doing their job. He walked out the back door into the cold morning air, breath fogging in front of him. Rain drizzled lightly, soaking his hair. His cheap coat wasn't warm enough. He should call his daughter. But what would he say? That he lost another job? That he had failed again? He stepped toward the street, and the ground vibrated beneath his feet. A sound ripped across the sky. Powerful, mechanical, familiar. Whoop, 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 whoop. Ethan froze. No, impossible. People on the street craned their necks. Nurses on break rushed outside. Even the guards stepped out to look. A massive MH-60S Navy helicopter descended from the clouds like a steel giant, its rotors slicing the air as it lowered toward the hospital roof. Wind blasted through the parking lot. Papers spiraled into the sky. Cars rocked. Ethan's heartbeat hammered in his ears. Another helicopter followed. Then another. 3 Navy aircraft hovered above St. Ridge Memorial. People gasped, phones raised, questions shouted. What's going on? Is this an emergency? Are they evacuating someone? Ethan knew better. The Navy didn't send 3 helicopters unless it mattered, unless it was ordered, unless it was personal. The hospital roof landing pad shook as the first chopper touched down. Armed personnel stepped out. A commanding officer in full uniform emerged next, scanning the ground. His eyes locked onto Ethan. "There!" he shouted over the blades. "That's him!" Ethan's pulse spiked. No, this couldn't be real. He hadn't worn the uniform in years. He was discharged, forgotten, just a janitor now. But the officer strode toward him with the stance of someone who recognized a superior. He saluted him. "Chief Petty Officer Cole," the officer said loudly, voice trembling with respect. "The United States Navy requests your immediate presence." A stunned silence fell across the parking lot. Everyone stared. Ethan swallowed hard. "I'm not Navy anymore, sir." "You will always be Navy," the officer said. "Your actions during the Blackwater operation were never forgotten. And this morning, your intervention saved the son of Admiral Hawkins." Ethan blinked. "The boy?" he whispered. "He's—" "Yes," the officer said. "The Admiral demands you be brought to him immediately." The hospital director burst out of the doors, hair blown wild by the wind, shouting, "What is happening here? Who is this man? Why are you landing aircraft on my roof?" The officer turned to her with cool authority. "Ma'am, with all due respect, this man is a decorated Navy combat medic. A hero. We are here to escort him." She stared at Ethan as if seeing him for the first time. "Wait, he's the janitor," she said weakly. The officer corrected her sharply. "He is the reason the Admiral's son is still alive." The crowd murmured. Nurses covered their mouths. The guards looked at him in shock. The director stepped back, face draining of color. "Mr. Cole," she stammered. "Ethan, wait, we can discuss your employment." But the officer raised a hand. "He does not work for you anymore." The wind whipped around Ethan as 2 Navy crew members approached him. "Sir, your seat is ready." Ethan looked at them, stunned, trembling. He thought of his daughter, of the photo in his pocket, of the years he had spent mopping floors because he thought his life had ended. Maybe it hadn't. Maybe it was just beginning again. He climbed onto the helicopter. The door shut with a metallic slam. The rotors roared, lifting him higher, higher. The hospital shrank below him. The director stood motionless in the parking lot, watching him rise into the sky with a mix of regret and awe. Ethan exhaled as the helicopter cut through the morning clouds. For the first time in years, his shoulders felt lighter. The Navy hadn't forgotten him. The world hadn't forgotten him. And his daughter. She would never have to doubt him again. The officer leaned toward him. "Sir, welcome back." Ethan closed his eyes. "Thank you," he whispered. The helicopters carried him toward a future he thought he had lost forever. And below them at St. Ridge Memorial, people would talk for years about the janitor who wasn't a janitor. The single dad who got fired. The hero the Navy came back for.